Did you know that over 44 million Americans quit their job last year, with 3.4 million of them alone doing it in January of 2024? Look, random team bonding exercises, pizza lunches, and even things like shout outs on a billboard for an employee of the month, those things are not enough to fix employee turnover and keep people actually engaged. If you feel like your company is a revolving door, I'm here to give you some fresh tips on how to actually keep your employees. Whether you're involved in hiring, whether you're a manager, or you do overall employee culture and well-being, I'm excited to be offering some tips to you as a financial therapist to help you keep the employees that you want to keep. My name is Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. I'm a certified financial therapist, licensed social worker, and founder of the financial wellness business, Mind Money Balance. I help people how to learn to use their money for good. And in this video, I'm talking about what to do if you're seeing employee turnover and giving you some sustainable ways to prevent that turnover from happening. So turnover is a fancy way of saying when people leave your company or leave your job and new people come in. Usually when there's a high rate of employee turnover, it is signifying that there's something wrong with your company or your organization that is having folks say, I need to move on to greener pastures. A few years ago, the Great Resignation was in pretty much every single headline. This was a period of time where workers were starting to realize what really mattered for them in their lives and were really putting work-life balance at the center of their well-being. This is when workers made a conscientious decision that they weren't willing to sacrifice their mental health, their physical well-being, or spending quality time with family and friends for a job that wasn't giving them what they really deserved. And thus, the Great Resignation was born. This was when we saw a wave of people quitting jobs very vocally and visibly by saying, I'm not going to sacrifice X, Y, or Z just for a job. Things have changed a little bit in the employee landscape, but at the same time, I think that really fueled people to start to put an emphasis on how they want their lives to be, not just what they want life to look like when they're not in the office. This means that there might be a little bit less loyalty to a particular company or to a particular organization as people continue to seek out better opportunities that fit in their lifestyle. What's happening now is something called the Great Reshuffle. And this Great Reshuffle is kind of like any of my Midwesterner card players who are playing euchre. It is when you shuffle the deck to get a better hand. And the Great Reshuffle looks like employees saying, ooh, I might not be ready to resign from my job, but I am ready to keep my eyes open for a better opportunity, or maybe even talk to my manager about ways to make this current job actually work for me. As I highlighted at the beginning of this video, this is a big problem with 3.4 million, to be exact, people quitting their job in January of 2024. Again, this type of trend of a mass exodus of people from the workforce really is saying we are no longer interested in this, and is a good opportunity for you, whether you're a manager or you work in human resources and hiring, to really get clear on what is going on and driving people out of your organization. So let's talk about some common reasons that people are leaving the workforce. While it can be easy to say, oh, it's only a financial reason that a person is leaving the workforce, that isn't true. Yes, money is a piece of it. I'll get to that in a moment. But there's also a huge emotional component tied to work. And there are two main categories that this emotional heaviness can show up in. One is in burnout, and then one is in feeling bored. So let's first talk about burnout, because that's one that I think most of us are pretty familiar with. But just to refresh you, burnout is a specific type of exhaustion that can come when you're working too much, or you're dealing with difficult things at work, or you feel like you just can't get breathing room. It feels like you jump from one project right to another without being given the opportunity to just like pause and get praise for the hard work that they've done, but also for feeling like it's just one thing after another after another. When people experience burnout, it impacts their physical and emotional well-being. This can look like difficulty concentrating, problems falling asleep or staying asleep, physical pain like body aches, stomach aches, muscle tension, and then just overall feeling a little bit negative, maybe even feeling a little bit cynical or feeling a little bit dissatisfied. So that's one end of thing. From overworking, we can kind of end up in this heavy emotional state of feeling burnt out. Now, on the other end of the spectrum of why people say they leave work for emotional reasons is that, quite frankly, they just feel bored. How we end up bored or understimulated at work is when challenges stop being presented to us. Now, again, we don't want to challenge employees so much that they're burnt out, but we want to make sure that they feel like they're being useful, like they're feeling like they're using their brains and their talents and their skills and their capabilities in a meaningful way. When we're doing something again and again, it can feel monotonous and it can make you feel underappreciated and unchallenged. And when we experience that feeling of being unappreciated, we can kind of feel despondent, which is another kind of way that the emotional side shows up at work. Now, of course, I mentioned earlier, money is, of course, a factor. And if you're thinking, oh, not us, we really pay our employees well, I want you to reconsider, because a recent study found that only 14% felt like they were adequately financially compensated at work, which means a lot of organizations have room to grow when it comes to compensating their employees. Now, this financial piece is tied directly to the emotional piece. When an employee does not feel compensated well for the work that they're doing, it can lead them to feel one of those two ends of things, of feeling like I'm working too much for the amount of money that I'm paid, or oh, this job is so boring and tedious, I bet I could get more money even if I'm doing a boring and tedious job elsewhere. So we really want to make sure that we're compensating our employees well. If you're finding that in your org or in your team, you're getting a lot of employee turnover. Now, as a financial therapist, obviously I'm going to be focusing on the intersection of money and emotional well-being. So let's just zoom out and talk a little bit about what financial wellness is and how it shows up in the workplace. Of course, I have a more thorough video, blog post, and podcast that talks about this, but just a high-level recap. Financial wellness is the capacity to have enough understanding around financial tools and education, aka financial literacy, to make meaningful and aligned action to be able to support a person's goals, dreams, and overall well-being. Financial wellness at work is about so much more than just a budgeting workshop or how to enroll in your 401k. It's about making sure that your employees feel like you care about their financial well-being. And because you care about their financial well-being, it ripples out into them feeling like you care about their emotional and physical well-being as well, okay? And when it comes to financial wellness, one of the most common things that I hear when I'm facilitating something for a corporate engagement, especially if we're talking about doing a financial wellness workshop, is some sort of version of, oh, we already did that. And when I tease out, what do you mean when you say you already did that financial wellness? Usually I get a response that I hinted at earlier, which is like, oh, we had somebody come in to talk about how to save on groceries, or we had somebody come in to talk about how to enroll in a 401k plan. And those things, of course, are important, but they don't go deep enough. They just scratch the surface level. And what research shows us is that about 80% of our financial decisions are driven by how we feel. So if you're ready to help your employees and help them with the financial wellness aspect, to obviously help them feel better in general, but also to reduce employee turnover, let's talk a little bit more about how you can actually implement financial wellness at work. One of the most frequent things I hear from employees is a version of, oh my gosh, I didn't know my job offered that. And when they're talking about, oh my gosh, I didn't know my job offered that, they're usually talking about benefits that you're already paying for. So one of my biggest tips for you is to give all of your employees a crystal clear, very simple to understand benefits document that says, here are all of the benefits that you get from working here, and here is the dollar amount that we associate with that specific benefit. So this should list everything, that comprehensive benefits package, in one simple to read, easy to understand place. It should include, of course, how much they're being paid each month, but also how much money is going into their retirement plan. How much of that is an employer match? How much are you contributing? Are there other financial benefits that they might not be aware of, such as childcare support, tuition reimbursement, or legal aid benefits? What are the things that you're already paying for that they just might not be aware that they can take advantage of? So that's like the lowest lift thing that I can encourage folks to do, is just create a total reward statement that shows them what they have access to. Going a little bit deeper than the overall picture of what folks have access to is if things require an additional step, such as we give you access to a financial advisor twice a year, but you need to call this number or you need to book through this portal. make sure it's crystal clear how they can take advantage of that particular benefit. The same thing goes with other benefits such as childcare subsidies, transportation subsidies, anything like that that requires your employee to take an additional step. Make sure they know how to actually access that benefit. Because it's one thing to say, hey, here are all of your benefits. Look at how much money we are giving you in total compensation. But it's another thing to make sure that the employees actually know how to take advantage of those benefits. Another thing that you can do without changing the actual dollar amount of compensation of your employees is being open about how employees can get a promotion or how they can get a raise or how they can get a bonus. Be crystal clear. Here is the promotion schedule, or here is the promotion structure. You need to reach this many metrics, or you need to have worked here for this many years, or you have to have achieved this particular training. Being really clear with here is a path for you to have that upward mobility. We value our employees. We want them to stay here, and we're going to be transparent with you about how you can go about staying here and being compensated more can go a really long way. So many times when I'm talking to clients in my financial therapy practice and they're looking for a new job, if their current job is pretty good, but they just don't feel compensated enough or they just don't feel challenged enough, one of the first things I often say to them is like, is there another position at your current company that you would want or that you are on track to achieve? And anecdotally, obviously, 9 times out of 10, they're like, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. But when we are in that phase of being burnt out or being bored, thinking about staying at our current company doesn't really feel like an option. But so many times there might be a different department, there might be a different manager, there might be a different skill set that we can encourage a person to harness to have them stay and feel really good about staying. So making sure that it's clear how people can go about staying at the company and getting promoted. Of course, financial compensation is a big factor. You can go back to my other video where I talk about how to financially compensate employees and make sure that you're holding on tightly to the good ones. But another thing to think about is how can you get creative with their compensation, thinking holistically and creatively about financial well-being. And this goes beyond the how-tos of how to manage money. I want to give you a couple of examples to get your mind thinking about what this might look like. For example, in one workshop that I led for HR managers, I taught HR managers different ways to help cultivate a culture that normalized financial conversation. This looked like giving them insight and information on how to include a financial check-in at their annual reviews, or how to include professional development workshops that tackled the emotional side of financial stress and financial anxiety. So that is an example of a training I did. In another successful workshop that I led, I worked with a corporate team to lovingly challenge this idea of how to budget. So it might sound a little contradictory because you're like, Lindsay, didn't you just say just teaching budgets isn't enough? Yes, which is why we're going deeper. In this particular workshop, I demonstrated the pitfalls or the downsides of the way that traditional budgeting is taught. And I talked to employees about how they can create sustainable, non-restrictive, expansive, and shame-free spending plans and walk them through different action steps that they could take to start implementing them right away. This not only gave employees a very tangible way to engage with their money outside of the workshop, it also showed them, hey, my company really values me. They are interested in my overall financial well-being, and they are interested in investing in making sure that I have a sustainable financial plan so that my compensation can be used in a meaningful way. We know that there is a literal time and energetic cost associated with an employee leaving. Posting a job, interviewing, training, getting somebody up to speed is not fun for most people. So if you can figure out how to engage your current employees to ensure that they feel safe, supported, and feel like you're on their financial side, there's a very good chance that you can decrease the amount of employee turnover at your work. When you nurture financial wellness at work, this is a win-win. It helps employees feel valued and be more likely to stay at your organization. And by offering these unique and holistic benefits, you help to decrease that turnover. If you want to learn how to promote financial wellness and you're interested in bringing in an expert, hi, it's me. Let's talk about the different topics that I offer to help people feel engaged at work by providing holistic financial wellness workshops that are fun, actionable, and shame-free. Learn more by going to mindmoneybalance.com.